Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's TOC podcast. I'm Joe Weichert, chair of O'Reilly's Tools of Change conference. Today's podcast is brought to you by our publishing partner, Publishers Weekly, and we now have a regular column in Publishers Weekly called Perspectives, and you can read the Perspectives articles on publishersweekly.com as well as in their print edition. I'm joined today by John Brownlee. John is the Cult of Mac's deputy editor. And this month's TOC theme is platforms. John has agreed to talk with us about the state of Apple's iOS platform. So John, welcome to this TOC podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start things off, John. Ebooks and reading, to me, always seemed like an afterthought for Apple and the iOS platform. Now, they certainly made sure that the iBook store launched with the original iPad, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot of traction there. And most publishers I talk to tell me that their Apple iBook store sales are a fraction of what they sell through Amazon. So do you see this ever changing where Apple gains a much larger share of ebook sales?
Yes, I do. I think that the key product that is going to help Apple do this is the rumored iPad mini, which is a rumor, but it's also getting to that too much smoke not to be fire stage. What we're talking about is a much smaller device with great battery life, with a $250 to $299 price tag. Small enough, about as small as the Kindle Fire, and something that can be easily slung into a bag. Much more affordable. I think that this is a device that will really help Apple get a larger share of the ebook market. Now, I don't believe that Apple will ever dominate the ebook market. They're releasing one device, and there are a number of other platforms available, and Kindle has, Amazon with its Kindle platform obviously has the lion's share there. But what I think we're looking at, is Apple's long game. They've put the pieces in place. They have the iBook store. They have iBooks Author. These are pieces that they're putting in place for the iPad mini, which is going to excel as an e-reading device. And, Apple has never really been about owning the lion's share. Like, if you think about it, the iTunes Music Store, that's kind of the exception. Apple, in its products and its services, they focus almost on having the most profitable share, not the majority of share. So Apple's really good at making a profit. I think that Apple's plans for ebooks are going to become a lot clearer by the end of the year.
Oh, interesting. Okay, because one of the things I've always felt is that the iPad is great for short-form content reading, like magazines and just articles, and the Kindle, especially the e-ink-based devices, are better for long-form. Do you think they'll be able to bridge that gap with this mini iPad?
Well, the reason the Kindle's better is because of its technology, right? The Kindle Fire is no better for reading long-form things than, say, the iPad is. E-ink technology is great. It's great on the eyes for people who have difficulty reading, bright displays or find it tiring. The iPad obviously excels for short things for people like that, but for people like me who don't really have a problem with screens or find them fatiguing on the eyes, I think that it's just as good for e-reading as, say, a Kindle is, except for battery life concerns and things along those lines. I don't think that technologically they're going to be bridging the gap in the sense of, are they going to do an e-ink display? Absolutely not. But there are other things that Apple can do to make their displays easier on the eyes. Like you're already seeing it with things like the Retina display. Now, I don't think that the iPad mini will have a Retina display, but there's all sorts of things that go into an LCD display that help make it seem more real and make it less fatiguing for our eyes. And Apple has been very, very good about continuously improving the quality of their displays, and I expect that will go forward. Likewise, one of the Kindle's greatest assets is battery life, which is fantastic. Like, if you open Game of Thrones, you don't want your battery to run out at page 654. But again, Apple has been, increasing battery life every generation. I think that for most people, for an iPad, 10 hours of battery life is kind of a non-issue. The real problem is the weight, the size, and to a lesser extent for a lot of people, the eye fatigue problem. And I think that there are things that Apple can do over time to mitigate these issues.
So let's shift gears then and talk for a moment about content presentation modes. So there's a bit of a battle raging right now over whether publishers should continue to develop custom iOS apps for their books, let's say, versus taking an HTML5 approach where they can use basically any browser that supports it. What do you think the future looks like there, and what's your opinion about native apps versus HTML5 content presentation?
I think that the way I feel is that, it's not really an either or thing. The iPhone, the iPad, iOS as a whole, the market share there is very significant, and you're reaching a very premium level of user, generally speaking, compared to Android. Android and other devices. It's worth it's worth tuning your apps specifically for them. iOS users tend to be fairly sophisticated. They know when an app has just been ported over from HTML, and that's the reason why everybody's always asking, is there an app for that? It doesn't matter if it runs in the browser so much. That's great, but iOS users, things really pick up on the iOS platform when they're a dedicated app. But at the same time, you have a fragmentation problem across all other platforms,
right.
And including iOS, where you don't have infinite resources. You've got a million phones with our own permutations of Android or Windows. You've got desktop. I think that the current strategy that people are using is to try to use HTML5 to reach as many people as possible, and then roll out specific apps towards tailored audiences as they can. And I think that that's a good strategy. Users can tell the difference and want dedicated apps, and I think that people should focus on reaching as many people as possible, but should certainly make a dedicated app, at least on iOS, one of their main priorities. If not at launch, then quickly thereafter.
Okay. I'm speaking with John Brownlee, Deputy Editor of Cult of Mac, and as a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by TOC's event partner, Publishers Weekly. Now, John, iBooks Author was released earlier this year with a lot of fanfare. In fact, I was pretty excited about it when it came out, but there hasn't been much talk in the industry about it since then. So what do you feel the future looks like for this tool?
I think that it's another part of a long game by Apple. I think that, we may very well, once Apple is making a bigger impact on the ebook market, which as I've said earlier, I believe will come through the form of the iPad mini. I think that people will start taking this tool more seriously, but right now, Kindle's the game. The Kindle platform is really the only game in town, and iBooks, iBooks Author doesn't really work with that. iBooks Author is great for textbooks. It's great for people doing cool little things on their own, like small businesses. But if you're trying to reach, if you've written a small children's book by yourself, you can publish that through Apple using iBooks Author, and that's fantastic. But I think for larger publishers who want to reach as many people as possible, a dumb Kindle ebook is kind of the way to go. That's who you're going to reach the most people of, and you can easily then take that and translate it into an iBooks format. I think though that what we are seeing with iBooks Author, is a WYSIWYG interactive approach towards ebooks. That's the future. I don't know if iBooks Author will win, but that is the future. Interactive books where you tap a link and you imagine reading Tolkien and tapping the word Moria and having a big map pop out, or clips from the films or whatever. This is clearly the way. This is clearly the way that ebooks are superior to regular books, and eventually the publishing market is going to embrace that. They're going to take advantage of this format. And Apple is, I think, looking into the future with iBooks Author and seeing that is eventually the way everything's going to go. But whether or not iBooks Author will be the tool that everybody's using down the line, I don't know. I don't think so. It's right now it only works on Apple devices, and you can't even write an iBooks Author ebook without a Mac. So it's very limited right now. But I definitely think that it's a step in the right direction. That's the future.
Yeah, you hit upon a pretty important point there, that publishing is kind of slow to evolve and adopt the notion of richer content like iBooks Author can offer. So it is, I think you're right, a long-term play by Apple and others that are developing richer content tools out there. So last question for you, got to ask you this since it's still so much on the tips of everybody's tongues. What's your opinion of the Department of Justice's recent suit against Apple and 5 of the big 6 publishers? Do you think there's merit to this?
Well, it's an interesting suit, and I think that there's merit in the sense that Apple and various publishers clearly should have had a lawyer in the room to make sure that they were following antitrust regulations. There's definitely a conspiracy in the sense that, they were looking to upset Amazon's wholesale model and switch over to an agency model. The whole suit is very dubious from the perspective of, Amazon is clearly the publishing monopoly. It has 90% of the market. Apple and publishers did force Amazon's hand to adopt a model that was more favorable to publishers. Amazon was essentially like, with its 90% share, they were dictating the terms. They could afford to sell these books at a loss. That's kind of how they do it, right. And that's not good for publishers, obviously. And I think that they were right to want to break out of that. I think that at the end of the day, what will end up happening is that this case will kind of peter out. But I think that the way in which the publishers and Apple went about undertaking this change was extraordinarily foolish. I was reading something that somebody was saying that just the price fixing is kind of the first degree murder of the antitrust world, and so the fact that there's even a whiff of that to this has really, that's why they're being pursued so relentlessly now. And it's a confusing case. Not a lot of people seem to really know what it's about or what's going on. But I think that there's merit in asking a lot of questions about what happened, and I certainly think that things could have been handled better. But I do believe that, as an outsider, that it's certainly been beneficial to ebook publishers as a whole.
Okay. All right. Great insight. John Brownlee, Cult of Mac, thanks so much for joining us on this TOC podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.